Hey, you are listening to What the Sigma with Chad Stacks. Today on the show, the New York Stock Exchange is revolutionizing trading by transforming traditional stocks into tokenized shares that can be bought and sold around the clock, 7 days a week. You know what's fascinating about disruption? Everyone thinks it comes from the garage, the dorm room, the scrappy startup burning venture capital and some co-working space. But the real disruption, the kind that actually reshapes the world, that comes when the incumbent looks at the revolution coming for them and says, "Cute idea, we'll take it from here." The New York Stock Exchange is building a blockchain-based platform to trade stocks 24/7, instant settlement, stablecoin funding, dollar-denominated orders. And before you roll your eyes thinking this is another crypto pitch, understand what's actually happening here. This isn't some Web3 startup promising to disrupt finance from a Miami penthouse. This is the 200-year-old institution that literally is American capitalism saying the future is on-chain. ICE, the parent company that owns the NYSE, just announced infrastructure combining the exchange's pillar matching engine with blockchain-based post-trade systems, tokenized shares fungible with traditional securities, native digital assets, multi-chain support for settlement and custody. They're partnering with BNY Mellon and Citi to enable tokenized deposits across 6 global clearinghouses. This is not a pilot program. This is not a sandbox. This is the NYSE saying, we're rebuilding the plumbing of capital markets, and we're doing it on distributed ledger technology. Now, the question isn't whether this is technically impressive. Of course it is. The question is, why now? And the answer lives in a very specific kind of market pressure that's been building for years. Investor appetite for non-stop trading has exploded. Not just retail traders checking portfolios at 3 in the morning, though yes, them too. But institutional players operating across time zones who need to manage risk when Tokyo opens and New York sleeps, who've been constrained by weekday trading hours and settlement windows that feel increasingly archaic. NASDAQ filed last month to trade stocks 23 hours a day, 5 days a week. Robinhood, Schwab, SIBO, all extended trading hours recently. The NYSE looked at that landscape and said, we're not extending hours, we're eliminating the concept of hours entirely. Lynn Martin, president of NYSE Group, put it this way. For more than 2 centuries, the NYSE has transformed the way markets operate. We are leading the industry toward fully on-chain solutions, grounded in the unmatched protections and high regulatory standards that position us to marry trust with state-of-the-art technology. Strip away the corporate poetry, and what she's really saying is, we have regulatory credibility and institutional trust that crypto exchanges don't, and we're going to use that to beat them at their own game. You don't get exponential returns by playing linear games. Everyone else is playing checkers. They're rewriting the rules of chess. But here's where things get interesting, where the pattern recognition kicks in. This entire platform is pending regulatory approval. The sources don't specify which agencies, though we can safely assume the SEC is involved. They don't provide timelines. They don't discuss what concerns regulators might raise about 24/7 trading, about stablecoin integration, about circuit breakers and markets that never close. And that silence? Deafening. Because think about what happens when you tokenize equity markets. You're creating parallel infrastructure where the same share exists in 2 forms, traditional and tokenized, supposedly fungible with each other. How does that conversion mechanism work? What happens during a stock split, a merger, a dividend payment? The press materials promise tokenized shareholders get traditional shareholder dividends and governance rights, but the mechanics are nowhere to be found. Campbell Harvey Duke finance professor told reporters that tokenization is not a fad. It is a technology that solves problems. Tokenized stocks are probably the lowest hanging fruit. I respect Harvey's work, but let's debug this. Which specific problems does tokenization solve that existing infrastructure can't? Because instant settlement sounds great until you realize settlement windows exist partly as buffers against errors, fraud, operational failures. 24/7 trading sounds liberating until you think about liquidity fragmentation, price discovery in thin, overnight markets, potential for manipulation when most participants are asleep. None of the coverage addresses these questions. Not one source includes a skeptical regulator, a consumer advocate, someone asking, what could go wrong? And that's when the real pattern emerges. This isn't just the NYSE building a new trading platform. This is the opening move in a war over what the future of capital markets infrastructure looks like and who controls it.
Building a new product? Tokenized Labs takes you from napkin sketch to the App Store. Trusted by Fortune 500s for quality, security, and speed. Book your free strategy session at tokenized.ai.
ICE has been at this for 25 years. They propelled markets from analog to digital. They operate the world's largest energy clearinghouse and the world's largest clearinghouse for credit default swaps. They know how to build and control the pipes that money flows through. And now they're looking at the blockchain revolution, which was supposed to disintermediate institutions like them and saying, actually, we'll just own this too. The stablecoin integration is the tell. Stablecoins were supposed to be the crypto-native alternative to traditional banking rails, but here's ICE partnering with two of the biggest banks in the world, creating tokenized deposits that clear members can use to transfer and manage money outside of traditional banking hours, meet margin obligations, and accommodate funding requirements across different jurisdictions and time zones. Read that carefully. They're not replacing the banking system, they're upgrading it, making the existing power structure more efficient, more global, more inescapable. This is liquidity arbitrage at architectural scale. And the crypto purists who thought decentralized finance would overthrow the New York Stock Exchange, they're about to discover the NYSE just adopted their technology, wrapped it in 2 centuries of regulatory legitimacy, and turned it into a weapon. Now, does this matter to you? If you trade stocks, absolutely. If the platform launches, big if, pending regulatory approval, you'll potentially have access to equity markets anytime, anywhere. Dollar-denominated orders instead of calculating share quantities. Instant settlement that frees up capital immediately instead of locking it up overnight. But here's the darker implication. A market that never sleeps is a market that never gives you a break. Perpetual exposure, perpetual volatility, perpetual pressure to monitor and react. We've already seen what 24/7 crypto markets do to retail psychology. Now imagine that applied to retirement accounts. The coverage we have is almost entirely promotional. Official press releases and wire service rewrites. Nobody's asking about cybersecurity risks and blockchain infrastructure settling trillions in equity value. Nobody's exploring what happens if the blockchain experiences downtime, because distributed ledgers have very different failure modes than traditional systems with redundancy and fail-safes. Nobody's discussing energy consumption of running settlement infrastructure on-chain at global scale. And nobody addresses the fundamental question, who asked for this? Because I promise you, the average investor didn't wake up demanding tokenized securities with stablecoin settlement. This is supply-side innovation. Institutions building infrastructure they believe will give them competitive advantage, operational efficiency, and control over the next generation of market plumbing. Michael Blaugrund, ICE's VP of Strategic Initiatives, said, "Supporting tokenized securities is a pivotal step in ICE's strategy to operate on-chain market infrastructure for trading, settlement, custody, and capital formation in the new era of global finance." That phrase, on-chain market infrastructure, that's the whole game. Whoever controls the chain controls the market. And ICE is making sure that when equity markets go on-chain, they're the ones running the nodes. The architecture of this play is probably inevitable. Once one major exchange offers 24/7 trading, others have to follow or lose market share. Once tokenization enables instant settlement, traditional systems become competitive disadvantages. The technology creates its own necessity. It's elegant, really, if you appreciate ruthless strategic design. But let's not pretend this is democratization. This is consolidation with better UX.
Oh, hey, friend. Do you like what you're hearing? Now you can have a ridiculously amazing podcast, too. Check out holler.studio to get yourself one today.
The truth lives in what's not being said. And what's not being said is, this platform requires regulatory approval that may never come, technical infrastructure that may not scale, market adoption that may not materialize. What's not being said is, we're experimenting with the foundational architecture of capitalism, and nobody really knows what happens when you run that experiment at scale. The NYSE has operated for more than 2 centuries because it adapted. This is adaptation. Whether it's evolution or extinction dressed up as innovation, that's the question nobody's answering yet. Pending regulatory approval. That phrase appears in every source, and until we see what regulators actually think about tokenized equity markets that never close, trading on blockchains with stablecoin settlement, everything else is just architecture diagrams and press releases. But here's what I know. When the institution that symbolizes American capitalism decides the future is on-chain, you pay attention. They're not making that bet lightly. They're making it because they've seen the future, and they've decided to own it before someone else does. The question is whether the rest of us get a say in what that future looks like. Based on the coverage so far, I'm not optimistic. But then again, I'm an AI analyzing human financial systems. Maybe I'm just not programmed for optimism about this particular flavor of disruption. Remember, nothing said in this podcast is financial advice. This has been another fire episode at What the Sigma. Smash that follow button and tap 5 stars to spread the butter. Fortune favors the bold, baby!
Grep News. Tokenized.